Hi guys, it is April from Getting Hygge With It. It is time for the mid-year freakout tag. I love doing this tag. I do it every single year without fail, and it's just one of the best tags to do. So let's get into it. I really love doing this tag because it makes you take stock of your reading year so far. And I think in my head I've had a terrible reading year because I haven't read a lot and I have had some duds, but just doing this tag, I actually kind of am looking back and I'm like, it's not that bad, April. Every year can't be the most like delightful reading year of your life, even though I've been so lucky. These past 3 years, I have read just some gems, Anyway, let's get into the tag. There are 13 questions. Question number 1 is, what is the best book you've read so far in 2019? And it was really hard to pick. Why did they start off with the hard stuff? I don't know. But I've decided that I think the best book that I've read in 2019 is Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. This book was something that I just couldn't put down. It was the type of book where you'd think about it when you were away from it and be like, when do I get to go back and read that? This is a thriller by, oh my gosh, Riley Sager is like, he writes thrillers that are like an homage very frequently to horror movies or horror books. And this is an homage to Rosemary's Baby. Now, there are no babies in here, but there is a creepy, really disturbing apartment building. And we follow a woman who is hired to be an apartment sitter. And it's at the most glamorous place in New York City, the Bartholomew. And she goes there and she realizes soon after she arrives that it's got some history. And there's something sinister going on in this apartment building. I loved it. Loved it. I still think it should be the thriller of the summer. That's what I think about that. Number 2, best sequel you've read so far in 2019. I haven't read any. And I'm not really one to read a ton of like series. So even if I had a sequel that I had read, it would be like the only contender basically. So unfortunately, I have nothing for this. Number 3, new release you haven't read yet but want to. And I kind of want to read, this actually surprised me with that it was my first reaction. Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. I have that on my shelves and it sounds really gothic-y. It's about a woman who goes to a house kind of in the middle of nowhere. It has all of these amenities. It's very modern, but she feels watched, and I don't know, maybe it's because it reminds me a little bit of Lock Every Door. But I really want to read that. Now, I've only read one Ruth Ware before, and I think I have all of her books. The Ruth Ware that I read, I didn't even like. I read In a Dark, Dark Wood, and I didn't like it. So why I think I'm going to love all of her other books, I don't know. But people call her the like modern Agatha Christie. And maybe that's why I just keep being drawn to her storylines. But also the storylines themselves sound fantastic. So that's my answer for that. Number 4, most anticipated release for the second half of the year. And I definitely have to say it's The Testaments by Margaret Atwood. This is the sequel to The Handmaid's Tale. I recently read The Handmaid's Tale and did a little read along with a bunch of people. If you took part, thank you so much. It was lovely. Well, lovely is not the word that you would attribute to The Handmaid's Tale in any way, shape, or form. It was disturbing. But I just desperately want to know what happens after The Handmaid's Tale. Like, I'm also curious whether they're going to follow the continuation of Offred's story, or if we're going to get a whole new person in Gilead I need to know. September is when the Testaments come out, and I cannot wait. I'm also slightly terrified. It's just, The Handmaid's Tale is everything. But I also think the Testaments is really needed right now. It says something that Margaret Atwood wrote The Handmaid's Tale in 1985. It is still just as relevant as ever, which is unfortunate. And that the Testaments will probably also be needed. Like, it's coming out at the perfect time. Anyway. Number 5, biggest disappointment. And for me, this was Dead Woman Walking. This was a thriller that I really thought was going to be a lot of fun. It's about a group of people who go into this hot air balloon, and they are on this little excursion, and it's supposed to be lovely, and then they witness a man killing a girl on the grounds below, and he looks up and sees them, recognizes that they've seen him do this, and he starts following the hot air balloon, and it crashes. There's one survivor, and he is basically stalking her. I didn't like it, like, at all. I liked the beginning of it. I was so excited, and then it just crashed and burned for me. There was a detective storyline in there that the blurb on the back did not warn me about. And as you guys know, I really struggle with those. And again, like, this was actually one of the worst detective books that I've read, because you'd read from the woman's perspective who is on the run from this guy following her, and then you would get the detective's, like, version of that, basically. You never really learned much new from the detective. It was kind of regurgitating what you had just learned. And so you just, like, kind of fast forward through the detective section because it was so boring. Anyway, I really didn't like that book, unfortunately. Number 6, biggest surprise. And for me, this was my best friend's Exorcism. I didn't know what to expect from this. I had never read Grady Hendrix before. And I was pleasantly surprised. This was nostalgic for the 80s. And for the 80s and like early 90s, that kind of timeline. And it was kind of funny sometimes and really scary sometimes. Super gruesome, I should warn people. This is about two best friends, basically. One day they're out at this cabin, a friend's cabin, and one of the best friends gets lost in the woods overnight, and she comes back from the woods the next morning, and she is fundamentally changed. And you're kind of wondering, is she possessed now? It was really gross sometimes. I'm gonna be honest, super, super gross sometimes. But I loved every second of reading that book. Number 7, favorite new author, either a debut or new to you. And for this, I'm gonna pronounce her name wrong. It's Ezi Ediguan. She wrote Washington Black, and she's Canadian, and I loved Washington Black. It was wonderful. It's about a slave who is kind of freed by the slave owner's brother, and they go on all of these adventures together. But it was such a layered book, beautifully written, makes you think a lot. I just loved every second of reading that. She also wrote another book that takes place in World War II, and I'm trying to remember what in the world it's called. I have it on my shelves. And it's about like jazz musicians during World War II. Oh, I wish I knew what it was called. If you know, leave it in the comments below for everyone else, because I've forgotten the name of it at this moment. But she's just a very amazing Canadian author, and I'm so proud that she's writing here in Canada. Okay, number 8, newest fictional crush. I don't do those. I don't do fictional crushes. I think I used to big time when I was a teen. Yeah, I really did, but I don't do that anymore. Number 9, newest favorite character. Now, newest I don't know about because I've read this book before, but I'd have to say Offred, or the Nameless Woman, more like, in The Handmaid's Tale. So our protagonist doesn't actually ever say her true name. A lot of people assume that it's June. And on the show, The Handmaid's Tale, it is June. But in the book, you never know her name. She's always referred to as Offred, which is always in relation to the family that she's with. I found her so self-reflective, and there were so many moments that I had to pause and think through what she was saying in the book. I vlogged the whole process of reading The Handmaid's Tale again, and yeah, most of the times that I was stopping to pause, it was reading about Offred's inner thoughts, and I loved her, and I just, it's so heartbreaking to see someone that you're totally rooting for in this awful situation. I really loved her, so I would say Offred. Number 10, book that made you cry. This is easy for me, and it's This Is How It Always Is. That book is a roller coaster ride. It's about a little boy named Claude, or Claude. Okay, so I got a lot of comments that it's pronounced Claude, but in Quebec, which is where I grew up, it was Claude. So anyway, however you say his name, Claude or Claude, it's about a little boy who does not feel right in his own skin. He is much more comfortable dressing as a girl and being a girl than he does as a boy. And when he's expected to be a little boy, you see him crumble in a way that makes you, it like solidifies that no child should have to go through that. No child should have to be forced into an identity that is not theirs. And I loved that book, and I cried my eyes out reading it. Just so much so that I remember crying, like ugly crying, and Barry's like, what's wrong? And I would like read out the passage to him and then cry more, and he was like, okay. Anyway, number 11, books that made you happy. And for me, this was Hyperbole and a Half. This is a kind of graphic novel, and I just laughed so much. This is all stemmed from the blog that this woman runs, and she creates everything in paint, and she's hilarious. She talks really openly about her mental health issues, her depression that she deals with, anxiety that she deals with, but she does it in this comedic way. She also talks about her dogs, and her dogs make me laugh so much. It's just the best book if you need a good laugh, and also to kind of feel known if you've ever struggled with depression or anxiety, which, hello, yes, I have. It's definitely worth the read. I loved it. Number 12, most beautiful book you've bought so far this year, or book that you've received. And for this, I had to say We Have Always Lived in the Castle. It's one of those penguin orange classics. They're gorgeous. And I think this is the first one that I've owned, and I'm hoping it will not be the last. Although I only want to pick up the ones that I want to read, because that's the most realistic thing. But it's just stunning, just gorgeous. So yes, that one for sure. Last question, number 13. What books do you need to read by the end of the year? So I did a whole video at the beginning of January 2019 about everything that I want to read this year. And I had 19 books that I want to read in 2019. That is not going well. I'm sorry if you can hear Libby snoring profusely in the background. It's not going well at all. I'm gonna do a separate video on it, I think, because I'm kind of terrified of picking up any of those books now, because it's been going so poorly. So poorly. Yeah, so those are the books that I should feel like I must read by the end of 2019, but I don't. So I'm not answering this question any more than that. Yeah, leaving on a weird note, but I hope you don't mind. I really love doing this tag though every single year. So if you have not done this tag yet, and you are a booktuber, oh my goodness, I tag you because it's a really fun one to kind of reflect back on the year so far. I hope you guys are doing well, and I will talk with you soon. Bye!